Good morning, my name's Nat Draper. I'm the Education Manager for the James River Association. We're here at beautiful Pony Pasture this morning. It's a wonderful place to come out and recreate. We're going to be talking about water quality of the James River. This is a two-part series. In part one, we talked about biotic components of the James River. In part two, we're going to be talking about abiotic or non-living components of the James River. So let's get started. Abiotic components or abiotic factors are non-living chemical and physical parts of the environment that affect living organisms and the functioning of ecosystems. When we discuss James River abiotic components, we would be talking about temperature of the water, pH of the water, and amount of dissolved oxygen in the water. Today we're going to have Charles Johnson, Senior Environmental Educator for the James River Association, conduct our temperature test.
Good morning. My name is Charles Johnson, the Senior Environmental Educator with the James River Association. This morning, we're conducting our first abiotic water quality test, which is temperature. Temperature is important because there are several industries that use the James River to cool down their facilities. So thermal pollution could affect the wildlife within the James River. We're going to conduct our test using the metric system today. So let's check out our thermometer. This morning, our temperature is 30 degrees Celsius, which is about 86 degrees Fahrenheit, which is fairly normal for this time of the year in the James River. Why temperature is important? Because we could see thermal pollution, which is excessive heat found in our waterways. The definition of temperature is a physical property of matter that quantitatively expresses hot and cold.
Good morning, my name is Julia Carson and I'm an environmental educator for the James River Association. This morning I'm going to be conducting our pH test. pH is a measure of how acidic or basic the water is. The range is from 0 to 14 with 7 being neutral. pH is less than 7 indicates acidity, whereas a pH of greater than 7 indicates a base. pH is a measure of the relative amount of free hydrogen in the water. In order to conduct pH, I'm going to be taking a sample of James River water. And then let's see what the results are. We got the result of about 8, which is a little bit on the basic side, but it's pretty normal for Pony Pasture this time of year.
Good morning, Charles Johnson here. We're conducting another abiotic water quality test, which is turbidity. We're going to use our turbidity tube to measure the clear or cloudiness of the water. We are going to use our measurement in centimeters today. Right back to that metric system. Let's get started. Now we have our turbidity tube filled up to past 110 centimeters. I'm going to now press down and look directly until I can see the black and white disc at the bottom. The black and white disc is now visible. This morning, our turbidity reading is around 110 centimeters, which is a great reading for this time of the year in the James River. To wrap up, our turbidity reading today around 110 centimeters is a great reading. Despite after a huge influx of rain that we just experienced in the James River watershed, this is a great reading. With 110 centimeters, it allows us to know that our plants at the bottom of the river are able to produce their own food and thrive in this environment.
Our next test is going to be dissolved oxygen, and this is the amount of oxygen that's in the river. All of this oxygen comes from aquatic plants that are underneath the river. So let's get started. We're We're going to start off by taking a sample of our James River water. Now that we've collected our sample, I'm going to take this ampule and put it into the sample and break it. This will allow our James River water to transfer into our ampule and mix with the liquid. We're going to wait about 2 minutes for the color to develop. Pretty dark. Before we talk about our results, we are measuring our results in parts per million, which is ppm, and fish need about 3 parts per million or more of oxygen in the water to survive. So in order to get our results, I'm going to move our ampule in between the ones on our chart to determine how many parts per million of oxygen is in the water. It looks like we have about 8 parts per million in the James River at Pony Pasture. A result of 8 parts per million is awesome because that means our fish have plenty of dissolved oxygen to breathe.
Hi students, for our final abiotic water quality test, we're going to do a nitrate test. Nitrates are often found in agricultural areas such where corn and soybeans being grown. They're often found too at sewage treatment plants. That's how they can enter the James River. Too much nitrates can cause something called an algal bloom. So right now we're going to read our nitrates test. We're going to grab a sample of water which I already collected, and we're now going to drop a little tablet into our test tube. All right, once I have the tablet in there, I'm going to shake vigorously for 60 seconds. And as this tablet disintegrates, there could be a water color change, indicating the amount of nitrates in parts per million that are found in this sample here at the James River. Okay, a minute has elapsed since I put the tablet into the tube. The tablet is now disintegrated and a reaction has occurred. We really did not have much color change in our sample. If there were high levels of nitrates, we would see this dark pink at 40 parts per million, or 20 parts per million at this medium pink. But our sample really doesn't have much of a color change at all, so that indicates 0 to maybe 1 part per million of nitrates. This is really good news for our water quality test today. Okay, it's now time to do a summation of our 5 water quality tests that we conducted today. The first one we did was temperature down here. We got a reading of 32 degrees Celsius, which is a good reading for this time of year. I'm going to give that an A-. When it comes to turbidity, we had an excellent reading of 110 centimeters. We were able to look down into the water column, which is great news. That means there weren't many sediment particles in our water column. That's going to be an A. Nitrates were 0 to 1 parts per million. Anything less than 5 parts per million is good. I'm going to give that an A-. Our dissolved oxygen for this area was pretty good at 8 parts per million. Anything higher than 4 parts per million is good for aquatic organisms like fish. So I'm going to give that a B+. And our pH was at 8, which is slightly basic, and that's also going to be a A-. So when we go through all our water quality assessments, we had great news. Our 5 abiotic water quality components were all A's and B+. That's great news for the water quality of the James. I also want to talk to you about where you can get some more information about the health of the James River. You can go to our State of the James 2019 report. Every 2 years we come out with a report of the James River and its health. It analyzes biotic and abiotic components. This is a great resource for you if you really want to know about the health of the James River. Thank you so much for joining us today on our abiotic water quality, and we'll see you soon.